Am I the a-hole for not allowing my husband and stepson to make everything retroactively equal? I was married to a wonderful man for 10 years. He passed away in a car accident when our children were 6 and 4. When I remarried 5 years later, my new husband had an 11-year-old son. So our children are now his son, 15, my son's 15, 13, and our daughter, 3. His parents set up a trust fund for his first son and for our daughter. I asked if they were doing anything for his 2 step-kids, and he said it was unfair to ask them to set money aside for kids that just came into the family. I accepted his answer, because my older kids have money from their dad's life insurance, so they have a good nest egg already. My first husband's parents are great people, and I've accepted my stepson and my daughter as bonus grandkids. They have made an effort to treat them well, and always include them in gifts for the family and on their birthdays and Christmas. My parents have also made an effort to be nice, but they're more standoffish with my stepson. They have a cordial relationship, and always send him gifts and invite him along on family events. My parents just sold their farm and are splitting the proceeds amongst all of my siblings and I. All the grandkids are also getting some money. The amount that my 2 sons and my daughter are receiving is about 5 times the amount that is in a trust fund that my stepson and daughter got from my husband's parents. My husband is now saying that it isn't fair that 3 of the kids are getting so much more. I said that it wasn't my money and that my parents could decide for themselves how it should be split up. He thinks that all the money for the kids should be pooled and split evenly. I refuse to even try and get into the legality of it. It is literally not my money. He says that I'm being an a-hole for singling out my stepson, but I just keep saying it isn't my decision. I approached my parents and they said that the most they would do is split up my daughter's money with him since they are half brother and sister. That would mean that she gets less than her brothers. I just want to leave everything alone. Am I the a-hole? Now for the top comments. So your new husband thinks your kids don't deserve his parents' money, but his kids do deserve your parents' money? Am I reading this correctly? No, he wants to pool all the money and split it evenly. But he only wants to pool the money now that your children will be receiving a much more abundant amount. Where was the offer to pool the money previously? He was complicit with the rules and asked you to be, so he should be complicit with the rules set forth by your parents. It's not your money to dictate who should receive it. When your kids are older, they can share as they see fit, or not. Info: are they giving you and your husband the money to dole out to the kids? Or are they setting up a trust for each child that they can access when they hit a certain age? It is all being done through lawyers. I do not have access to the money set aside for my kids. It isn't real inheritance. It is a trust fund set aside for their futures. My money is also going into a trust where I can draw on the interest. As a farm, but it is really a farm corporation and it is being sold to an even larger one. But it is several full sections of prime agricultural land. They are keeping like 1,000 acres and setting up a wildlife sanctuary with only family cabins on it. It is a big deal, but I just want it over. The point more becomes that it really doesn't matter what your husband thinks or wants if the 2 of you don't have access to the trust, as in you're not trustees. Does it suck? Kinda, yeah. Blended families have challenges, and this is one of them. But he needs to look in the mirror and rationalize how it was okay when it was his kids getting money and now it suddenly isn't. But ultimately, it doesn't matter since the only ones that can make changes are those in charge of the trust. Not the a-hole and big red flag about hubby. He's moving the goalposts here. He told you that your kids would be shafted in the deal from his folks and expected you to be okay with that, which you are. But now that the son is being shafted by the deal from your folks, it's suddenly not fair? Not how it works, bro. Next story. Am I the a-hole for letting my stepdaughter spend a night in jail instead of bailing her out right away? My wife, 38 female, and I, 39 male, have been married for 6 years. We have 2 kids, 8 and 5. My wife also has a daughter, Mary, 18, from before we got together. Mary's in her senior year of high school and lives with us. She will go see her bio dad 2 weekends a month, but due to her extracurricular activities, it is not always an every other weekend thing. Since bio dad lives about 2 hours away, Mary works out times with her dad for her to visit him and she drives herself there. This past weekend, my wife took our 2 younger kids to visit her sister who lives about 3 hours away. Before my wife left, Mary told us that she was going to visit her dad that weekend. I was going to stay home to get some work done on some home projects that had been neglected over the holidays. So on Friday, after everyone else had left, I kicked back and took advantage of the very rare opportunity of having an empty house to myself. I bought a nice bottle of bourbon, visited our local dispensary, and bought myself a nice big steak. About 3 a.m., I was awoken by a phone call. Any parent knows that a phone call at that time of night is a nightmare situation, so I immediately answered. It was my wife, and she told me that Mary had been arrested and had just called her from our local jail. Apparently, she lied about going to her dad's house and had instead attended a party. The party got busted and Mary panicked and tried to run. Of course, the cops caught her and arrested her. My wife said that the police would allow me to go get Mary right away instead of keeping her in jail. I told my wife that I had been drinking earlier and was probably not safe to drive, let alone drive to a police station. I told her that I would pick Mary up first thing in the morning. My wife yelled at me for being irresponsible by drinking to that point in case of an emergency. I told her that I was home by myself, and everyone else in the family was supposed to be hours away, so I essentially had zero responsibility for anyone besides myself. She eventually calmed down enough to see my side. The next morning, I went and got Mary right when I woke up. When I saw her, it was obvious she had been crying a lot, and she didn't say a word to me on the way home. She immediately went to her room when we got home and didn't come out the entire day. The next day, when my wife got home, Mary was still in her room. My wife talked to her and then came to talk to me. She told me that both her and Mary are disappointed in me that I made her spend a night in jail instead of getting her right away. She said Mary is traumatized by the whole thing. I told her good, maybe next time she won't lie and do stupid things. I reminded her that Mary's an adult now, and she has to get used to facing consequences of her actions, and this should be a very clear reminder of what those consequences could be. My wife said that the lesson could have been made without making her spend a night in jail. Arrested for what? Cops breaking up parties aren't looking to fill holding cells with teenagers for underage drinking or smoking weed. Even assault cases walk out after booking in most places. You're the a-hole regardless. If you were drunk, then take an Uber and go get her. They charged her with underage drinking, resisting arrest, and disorderly conduct. We are looking into a lawyer because I expect we can get some of the charges reduced or dropped completely. We live in a smaller town, population is under 10K, and we don't have Uber here. Not the a-hole. I don't see any part of this situation that would be improved by you showing up drunk and hide to a police station in the middle of the night. This comment is all that's needed. I don't know where OP is. But in Canada, while it is legal, you still can't drive under the influence of cannabis, let alone alcohol. This is a recipe for disaster for the both of them. Exactly. Wife's disappointment is so misplaced. She sees OP's side, but still wants the outcome to have been different. That's not an OP. Not the a-hole. If she was so traumatized by spending the night in jail, then why didn't your wife contact her actual father after you told her you were not sober enough to drive down to bail her out? Surely 2 hours away is not far when his daughter was in jail. Right? Like, where is Biodad in all of this? Next story. Am I the a-hole for reprimanding my adult son and telling him to get over himself? My son has 2 boys ages 16 male and 12 male. Their mom, and my son's first wife, died suddenly 10 years ago. My son and the boys were lost. But 8 months later, my son met a woman and fell very hard and fast for her. He admitted to his dad and I that he felt like everything could be perfect again. The boys could have a mom present and he could have a wife again. We warned him that it might not be that easy, but he was so happy again and appeared to have lightened after meeting her, so we tried not to say too much. His oldest son, we'll call him Cole, did not take to my son's now second wife Emma very easily. My son and Emma married 2 years after his first wife died. Emma had lived with them 6 months prior to the wedding. The youngest, Jamie, started to call Emma mom almost immediately, but he was so little with no memories of his mom. Cole was different. He did not want to call her mom and did not like the idea of her being his second mom. He was adamant he did not want her like that. It became especially clear during the wedding that things would not go well. My son and Emma planned a small exchange between her and the boys. Meant to be a sweet moment to celebrate the joining of the family, but Cole wanted no part in it and sat out while his brother and Emma took part. After that, we suggested to our son that everyone could do with some therapy and he listened. It's clear that our son has grown to resent Cole for not embracing Emma and being part of the family the way he wanted him to be. Their relationship is incredibly stained, and Cole is polite but very distant with Emma. He treats her more like he does his teachers than he does the rest of the family, and it angers our son. I have seen my son visibly frustrated when Cole calls her Emma, or when he talks about his mom. A few days ago, my son was ranting and raving about how Cole is a stubborn brat and how he will never be able to understand why he can't accept Emma as a mom too. He said that adoptive kids don't dig in their heels this way and refuse to accept a new parent, that most are so grateful to have someone. He said it's disrespectful to him, Emma, and to Jamie, that it undermines the family they all want to have, and Cole refuses to even try. Also, that he wishes Cole was more like Jamie, that Jamie handled things right, that Cole is disrespectful to him as his dad by not listening, and he also said he finds it hard to look at Cole and feel the same as he does for Jamie because all of this. I reprimanded him for talking like that about Cole. I told him he needs to get over himself and accept his son, and find a way to accept that neither Cole nor Jamie's way is inherently right, and it's about what's right for them as individuals. I also told him Cole can feel every bit of that anger, and one day he will lose his son if he can't accept the truth for Cole and let go of all this frustration. My son told me I will never understand and should not speak to him like he's a child. Am I the a-hole? Now for the top comments. Not the a-hole. When Cole is 18, I fully expect Cole will need a place to stay. Make sure your door's open to him. It's so sad knowing it could get that bad, as Cole sounds like he's been respectful of Emma, even if he doesn't think of her as his mother, and he's more than allowed to do that. I feel so bad for him. It seems like he is being pushed to call her mom. If he doesn't want to call her mom or see her as his mom, I don't see the issue as long as he respects her and isn't outright mean, etc. And if we are being honest, when kids are that age, when you push them to do something like that, it will just make them rebel more. If Cole ever does get to the point of wanting to call her that, it needs to come naturally. But if he never gets to that point, that's okay too. You're definitely not the a-hole. Your son needed to hear it, and now just needs to absorb it hopefully. If your son doesn't want to be spoken like a child, then he needs to stop acting like one. From your description, Cole is not disrespectful or mean to Emma. She is not his mother, and she will never be, but he is polite to her. That's all he needs to do. Your son is 100% wrong in this scenario, and in 2 years when Cole is 18, he will have nothing to do with his father. You stood up for your grandson. Looks like you are the only one in his corner. Not the a-hole. Children play pretend, and Opie's son is expecting Cole to pretend he never had a mother apart from Emma. That's pretty childish. Last story. Am I the a-hole for driving off when I saw that my fiancé brought her kids to our trip and told her that she was the one who ruined it? For months, my fiancé was busy with her kids and work, so she wanted us to go on a couple's trip and I promised to make it happen this month. She was supposed to leave her kids, 4 and 7, with their father, but he had a death in the family and had to travel towns away. I went to pick her up on the day of the trip, but was surprised to see my stepkid standing there with her. I was confused, till she told me about the situation her ex had. I asked what she was supposed to do with the kids, and she suggested we take them along. I refused, and reminded her of the kind of trip we planned. She said circumstances change, and she can't leave them behind nor find a babysitter so fast. I decided to just cancel, but she begged me not. I just proceeded to drive off, and the trip got cancelled and I went home. She left me some texts, basically blaming me for what I did, but I responded that she ruined the trip when she decided to bring the kids. She said those are her kids, and I shouldn't expect her not to prioritize them, which I respect, but that wasn't the point. Long story short, we had a fight and she is still upset with me and refused to answer my call or open the door for me. Am I the a-hole for how I reacted? Everyone sucks here. When you have kids, things can come up unexpectedly. You're going to need to accept that. The reason I say everyone sucks here is because she should have communicated with you as soon as she knew she'd have the kids. She shouldn't have waited until you showed up, ready to go off on a trip for 2. Together, you two could have decided how to handle things. But you also didn't need to react like that. I wouldn't want my young children around an adult who acts like he is taking his ball and going home. My immediate thought was, why didn't you tell him prior to him showing up ready to leave? She completely blindsided him, so I can understand him being upset. Did he react the right way? No. He could have civilly communicated and canceled the trip. But she could have also communicated the situation better. Exactly. Which makes it an everyone sucks situation. Except the kids, of course. I feel the worst for them. Can you even imagine? Sucks for them. But to add another level to all of this, I want to know who was footing the bill. He states he planned it. So is the full expense on him? If so, then was she expecting him to cover the additional cost for the kids? She tried to turn it into a family getaway. so it stands to reason she was expecting him to cover it completely. Not the a-hole. I'm a mom of 3, and this was an ambush. No reason she couldn't have called or texted. She wanted you to feel pressured. Mom here as well. I would have called the dude and told him. Yeah, she's definitely kind of a jerk here. The moment she found out the kids were staying, she should have said something. Not only did she not tell him to cancel the trip, she begged him not to, as if taking kids to a couple's trip is a reasonable ask. Not the a-hole. First story is titled, Am I the a-hole for firing my son? I'll get straight to the issue. My male 43, 17-year-old son Adam has been trying to become independent and preparing to move to college, but was struggling to find a job. I own a private warehouse as a side job to earn a living, so my wife suggested I hire my son to work at the warehouse. Moving boxes, bringing workers lunch, helping with cleaning, that kind of stuff. She said it is for both of our benefits, since he couldn't find a job and we needed to hire someone new. I agreed, and Adam was so happy and excited to start working. We agreed on a salary and work hours, so he still have time to study and practice. The first couple of weeks were going fine. That is, until one day. The workers were moving boxes, computers, into the warehouse. The client wanted them to be stored for a few days, and already arranged before they arrived. It was all written down, including the number of computers we stored. In the evening, while I was checking, I noticed there was one computer missing. I gathered all the workers except for Adam, and they had no idea and thought there was a mistake. I brought it up home, and Adam told me that he saw one of the workers putting a box in the garage to take home with him. I was confused, since he couldn't specify which worker it was. He eventually gave me a name and I went to talk to the worker. He denied it, and I ended up giving him X amount of time to bring back the box, and then I discussed why he did what he did. The worker is a single dad with 3 kids, and I've known him for a while, and I wanted to give him a chance. The next day I was busy. My daughter was in the hospital, and I got back to the warehouse at 8 p.m., and it occurred to me to check the cameras. What I saw was Adam putting a box in the back of his friend's car, and then the car left. I knew his friend, and knew Adam stole the computer. I went home and I confronted him. My wife sided with him when he denied it, and after arguing for hours, I fired him and told him he was lucky I didn't call the police. This was my responsibility. The client entrusted me with his computers, and Adam stole on the job. Adam started crying. My wife said it was wrong for firing him, that it was extreme and should have just took from his salary. She refused to drop it and tried to convince me to hire him again, but I refused. I apologized to my worker and I told him if there's anyone he knows who needs this job, I'll be more than happy to hire them. He brought his brother and he started working with us right away. Now, my family calling me an a-hole for hiring an outsider and not my son. Edit. The box was being kept at his friend's place. His friend is such a disrespectful a-hole, I won't be surprised if he was the one who came up with the idea. However, it was Adam who took it, and so he needed to be fired. This is not okay, nor is it acceptable. Now for the top comments. Wow, not the a-hole in this instance, but your family is terrible. Adam happily threw someone he viewed as a worker, and not a single father of 3, under the bus for his crime. Turn your son in to the cops. He is going to hurt more people if you don't. I would have voted everyone sucks here, but we're talking about the one instance, and not your parenting in general. It's unlikely, however, that you are completely blameless for your son's behavior. Your family sounds awful, and you had a hand in creating that. Edit based on OP's new info. Stop. This is not about your son's friend being such a disrespectful a-hole who you think probably came up with the idea. Even though you acknowledge that your son deserves to be fired for his actions, that overall thought process is enabling your son. 100% agree with you. In my opinion, it doesn't matter if he's his son. He's his employee and committed theft. That's a crime and should be reported to the authorities. Big not the a-hole. This is a serious offense, and if this happened with another boss, he might be sitting at a police office now. You're a good boss. I suggest showing your wife the video if she's taking his side. I can't imagine. But the police would have absolutely gotten involved if this was someone else and not me. I'm not tolerating his behavior. I know what he did was wrong, but I wanted to give him a warning to realize his mistake and learn from it. Not at A-Hall. He stole from his place of employment and lied about it, and tried to get an innocent employee in trouble for it. If I had done that, I'd freaking expect to get fired. I think trying to get an innocent coworker fired for it was way worse than the stealing itself. That's disturbing, not at A-Hall. Am I the A-Hall for telling my wife to get over herself, or I'll go to my son's wedding without her? It's a bit of a complicated situation right now. My wife and I got married 13 years ago. I had a son from my previous marriage who was 15 at the time, and my wife had a daughter who was also 15. The kids were already older, and we never believed in pushing them to bond if they weren't interested in that. They had their own separate lives before we married, so there was no point in forcing them into something. I'm guessing you all know where this is going. 2 years ago, my son and stepdaughter, now both 28, sat us down and confessed they have been dating over a year. It was a bit strange for me hearing this, but I was respectful of their relationship, although it did take a while for it not to feel weird for me anymore. I did always consider my stepdaughter like my own and were very close. My wife was upset at first, but she worked it out by believing they would break up eventually. Now that they announced they're engaged and plan to have a small wedding in a couple months, my wife is furious. All phone calls to her daughter have been my wife demanding they break up and keeps telling her it's not natural. This has upset them both, and my wife declared she's not going to their wedding. We had a huge fight because I couldn't believe she would refuse to go to her own daughter's wedding over this. It's not like this came out of nowhere. They have been in a serious relationship for years, so she's had time to get over whatever weirdness she feels about it. I finally told her that she needs to get over herself, and if she refuses to go, then I will simply go without her. She's now mad at me for not having her back on this, and acting like what she feels doesn't matter. My wife says she's allowed to not approve of their marriage, and as her husband, she thought I would have her full support on this, so she feels in a way betrayed that I'm not taking her feelings into consideration. But it's also my son's wedding, and I would never miss it. Things are very tense, and she's still telling me she's hurt by my actions, and that I would willingly go to something she's not comfortable with. I'd like to know if I'm being the a-hole for perhaps being too dismissive of my wife's feelings about this. I understand why she feels weird, but like I said, she's had time to get over it, so I don't know. Now for the top comments. Not the a-hole. Offer to divorce her so the kids' relationship isn't weird anymore. My wife demanding they break up and keeps telling her it's not natural. This is the part that amuses me. It's not like they're biologically related, and they didn't grow up together, so there was likely never a sibling dynamic. If anything, when you put two horny and related teenagers together, things are probably going to happen. Not at a-hole. Yes, your wife is allowed to disapprove of this relationship, but it also means that you are allowed to approve of it. Same rules for everyone. She's projecting her behavior onto you. She doesn't care about your feelings and dismisses them since they don't agree with her. I don't fully understand the issues your wife has, to be honest. It's not natural. They aren't related in any way. They met when they were 15, old enough to make their own decisions. Even though they weren't pushed to be step-siblings, my wife and I still viewed them as our children. My son became closer to her and they had a friendly relationship before this. Same goes for my stepdaughter and I, but neither of them formed that type of familial bond with each other. To her, they're both her children, so that's why she finds it strange and unnatural. Next story. Am I the a-hole for lying in my therapy sessions because I knew my mom was eavesdropping? So I, female 18, live at home with my mom, dad, and siblings. With past events, I've started seeing my therapist again. My mom is kind of controlling and hates that she hasn't been able to sit in my doctor's visits/therapy sessions since I was 16. With that being said, me announcing I'm seeing my therapist again but through video calls, my mom has been trying to find ways to destroy my electronics, so I'm forced not to see a therapist. The last 2 months, I've noticed anything I mentioned in my therapy sessions, she would suddenly bring it up in conversations. For example, I talked to my therapist about being depressed and missing my best friend because I cannot function without her. She's not dead, I just haven't seen her in person since May last year. And in the middle of my dad and I talking about online games, she asked me if I was depressed and if I missed my best friend. Coincidence? Maybe. But in case that wasn't enough proof, here's another example. I was talking to my therapist about an old friend from camp finding me on social media and getting in contact with me. And that same day, my mom asks me if I've talked to any old friends from camp lately. I finally realized I wasn't overreacting. And she, in fact, was listening in on my sessions. So I told my therapist about my suspicions, and with her permission, during our last meet, I started spewing out as many sinful lies I could. Basically saying things like, I was having intercourse with multiple men from work, that I've been doing these. I said I thought I was pregnant and I didn't know who the father could be. You get the picture. The rest of the day, my mom was angry and throwing things around. Finally, during dinner, she broke and started calling me names and expressing how disappointed she was in me, and how I've turned into such a disgusting person. I asked how she could have known as I've only told my therapist, which forced her to come clean and listening in. Only after she admitted to it, I came clean about lying about the whole thing. My dad said I shouldn't have put her in such position to believe I'm doing any of which I said. My siblings agreed and said I could have just confronted her about eavesdropping. But confronting my mother would result in me being told I'm overreacting. Am I the a-hole for misleading her? I want to add a few things. I cannot move out because there's nowhere I can go and I'm flat broke, but I am saving. There's nowhere else I can have the sessions but in my room, and I don't have any extra electronics to play because it's usually too loud, and any quieter would be useless. Not the a-hole. Lol. Kudos to the therapist for playing along. Hope she gave you advice on how to stop your mom listening in though. Hey Opie, I know you said you don't have anywhere else to go. I felt that way too, but there are options. Could you go outside and sit in a car? Or maybe you could go somewhere outside your home. If it's cold outside, that might not be ideal. But consider places you could walk to where there wouldn't be a lot of people. Definitely look into headphones and talk to your therapist about this. I've been where you are and it sucks, but it helps so much to find a different location. Edit. Opie, where is your dad in all this? And how does he feel about her eavesdropping? Can you get any support from him? Not the a-hole. Your mom is crossing major boundaries. Your dad is enabling her. I hope you can find a way to restore your therapy sessions properly. Not the a-hole. Can you set up the session where you have headphones to listen to your therapist, but you type your side so she doesn't hear? The last story is titled, Am I the a-hole for refusing to give my ex her mother's ashes? So I get the title sounds like an immediate yes, but hear me out. I grew up in a small town in New South Wales and met a girl we'll call Emily in primary school. We instantly became friends, and because of a rough home life, I was at her house constantly and her family became like a second family to me. I was there when her dad died and when her little sister Carol was born. I wasn't in the room, lol. I got on especially well with her mother Greta, since I never really had one. Toward the end of high school, me and Emily started dating and decided to get married when we were both 20. However, we soon found out that we wanted different things in life. Emily wanted to go out from our small town and make a name for herself, whereas I just wanted to live here, work, and have a simple life. We eventually decided to get divorced, and Emily moved away. I stayed friends with Greta and visited often, since she lived alone and we had a weekly family game night. However, Emily became more and more harder to contact, and didn't visit nearly as much as she said she was going to. Greta eventually got breast cancer and went through 2 rounds of chemo before dying from it. This went on for a year and a half and Emily visited 3 times. She lived 3 hours away, but still. When she died, I immediately tried calling her, and like usual, she ignored a call. Even answered once or twice just to hang up. Her sister had to break the news, and even then, she wouldn't answer. Until the 7th call, which she answered by screaming, "What?" I also want to point out, because I feel it's important, that there were no COVID travel restrictions at this time. Nothing was stopping her from coming. So we flew her down for the funeral and we all went to the ceremony. It was so hard for me, and I spent the whole time holding Carol as she was hysterical. I gave a eulogy and so did Carol, but had to stop halfway through because it was too much. We then went to hear the will get read. Greta left girls the home and its contents, which Emily agreed to just give to Carol. And I was surprised because Greta bought a used school bus off her uncle in Broken Hill and left it to me in the will as I always talked about converting one into an RV. He had even driven it down for me and was at my house right now. Then came the big surprise. I was left Greta's ashes. Emily freaked out and said that it should go to her since I wasn't even part of the family. I disagreed, as I had been around way more than her and had helped Greta through her recovery as well as everything else. Carol took my side, and Emily stormed out. Me and Carol decided to spread her ashes in the river, which was her favorite place in town, as she walked along it with her dog. We told Emily, but she just went back to her house and refused to be part of it. We decided to wait for her, and told her that she has a year to change her mind, and we're just going to spread them after that. I'm pretty confident that I've done the right thing, but I have a bad feeling in my gut about it all. Am I the a-hole? Now, for the comments. Not the a-hole. She willed them to you. This was her wish. Absolutely this. It's as simple as that. No excuses. Not the a-hole. I was left Greta's ashes. That is literally all that matters. Not the a-hole. Yep, the only part of the story that matters. She bequeathed them to you for a reason. Not the a-hole. You were left the ashes because you were trusted to do what is best with them. If Emily doesn't come around, you might consider a memorial necklace for her, with a small portion of the ashes before spreading the rest. That's a good idea. Thanks. I'll look into it. And that's the end of this video, folks. As always, leave a comment and hit like and subscribe. And if you want more of this content, turn your notification on to get updated on the latest videos. And I'll catch you in the next one. Stay safe.